Hi, I'm Cameron. I just read comics. I love them. Welcome back to another episode of Cameron Reads Comics. On today's episode, I'm talking about The Flash by Mark Millar and Grant Morrison, deluxe hardcover. Just wrap this up, so let's talk about it. Okay, so actually there's a little bit of drama surrounding this one because Mark Millar and Grant Morrison no longer are boys. After this, I think actually during this run, they started this partnership, obviously, and then they stopped their run. By the end, it was just Mark Millar writing it, so I don't know what that has to do completely with the feud, if it was the Flash book itself or their partnership or whatever, but I kind of was like, oh, it's really interesting that it's a known feud in the industry, so I was like, oh, let me go pick this up. Let me see. I know that this is the first appearance of the Black Flash, or Death incarnate in DC's canon, so I was like, okay, let me go check this out. But yeah, this run takes place in between. They take this book over for about a year between Mark Waid's Flash, like super duper long Flash run. So I don't know if he just needed some time off or if he needed to, if he was meant to come back. I read the first leg of his Flash and it's incredible, or the first third of his Flash run, everything up until Impulse. And so yeah, them coming in and doing this was, it's interesting. It's just kind of like in the middle, and it's before they really took off, you know. Mark Millar was doing some minimal stuff at DC, Superman Adventures books. I don't know how far he'd gotten in all of his writing before he picked this up. And then Grant Morrison, like, notoriously did this. He did some JLA stuff. He was around, but he wasn't the Grant Morrison we know and love today. But that's also why it's kind of cool to see a character like this. One more point before we get into the text itself. I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I think that the Flash, specifically Wally West, but the Flash in general, is a character that really showcases what makes DC Comics. When I think about all of the writers that have been on the Flash, and then the ones that have gone on to take over DC, it's been far more of them than fewer of them, at least in current generations, because we have Mark Waid, who's a luminary DC writer, my favorite writer of all time, with the definitive Flash run ever. Then you have Jeff Johns, who did a run on Wally West afterwards. Obviously, we have Grant Morrison, we have Mark Millar, who've all worked on this title, Josh Williamson in recent memory, and that's just what comes to my mind right now. When it comes to DC Comics, I'm believing more and more as I think about it that if you know how to write the Flash, you really understand DC, because he has some of the best well-rounded characters as villains in the group that is the Rogues, a really unique take on a supervillain versus superhero kind of world and team up. And then you have the other factor, which is the supreme factor in writing DC, is legacy characters, or what a superhero's legacy and surrounding family looks like. Flash, while it is an individual book, it is a family book. You don't only need to know how to write Barry Allen when you're writing the Flash. You need to understand his dynamic with Wally, Impulse, Jay, Garrick, and Joan, and Iris and Linda. It's just like you really need to understand all of these pieces that are coming into play when you write a Flash book, because if you can understand that and understand how all those work together to tell a really great Flash story, I really believe that you can write a really excellent DC Comics story, because, you know, you need to understand all those factors about every other superhero when you're writing them. Legacy is so important to the Flash, and it's so important to DC, because I think some of the best, DC's best characters are legacy characters. You know, I think it's up there. I'll say right now, Wally West is my preferred Flash. I like him more than Barry. So to read a Wally West book, I'm stoked. And then to see him done really well, I'm stoked. Just a quick rundown on the Flash and these writers. And it's cool to see. For the story itself, this story takes place over, I'd say there's 3 main arcs. The first arc is pretty gnarly. It's like an ode to Mark Waid. It's a dedication. And straight up, I believe it's called Dead Stop, where Wally West breaks his legs fighting some guy. He has to solve his own murder in the future, and then he breaks his own legs doing it. It's pretty wild. That whole concept, really cool, really fun, really unique and innovative. It's cool to come, I think those early runs, demonstrate, the scrappiness of young writers coming on. The next one is called The Human Race. That is where Flash has to race against, he has to race an unbeatable race to save humankind from kind of like a Galactus kind of character. So he has to do that. And so how is Wally going to race with the weight of the world on his shoulders. He's the only one qualified to run a race on behalf of Earth, right? That one was really, really interesting. And then the last main one was the Black Flash arc, which is basically what you can't outrun death. If death can't get you, who's it going to get close to you? So it's just really those concepts, all of those were really cool and really big. And I think for the stories itself, Mark Millar and Grant Morrison, it really shows how scrappy they were. It just showed like the next generation in comics was coming at the time of this. It didn't feel like a 90s story. It was really good in those ways, and it's so encouraging because, like, you know, tonally, if you've read Mark Millar and Grant Morrison, you know how they are individually. Grant Morrison's super meta. He's really gonna play with like concepts and meta narratives, and then there's gonna be Mark Millar, who is so blockbuster action, and seeing them like trying to express themselves in that way but have so much oversight from editorial, it feels like they want to break out, but there's kind of like a house style that's imposing itself on them. I'm not against the house style, especially like what I read comics, you know what I mean? I read all the DC comics, so I'm not against the house style, but it's really funny to see those influences and like where I feel like some of these stories didn't get to go as far as these writers wanted to take them, which was just interesting, and I liked it. It's cool to also see when you're reading this, them take what happened in the last run, like actually exist within continuity. Take what happened in the last run and pull it in its own way. Originally, you had Mark Waid's run with Greg LaRocque, and the costume was kind of like stuck in how Greg LaRocque would have drawn the Flash costume, which is, I love that look, but you know, they found themselves able to write away. They didn't like the white eyes on the Flash, so they found themselves a way to write the Flash and create the Flash a new costume without using, you know, his eyes show, kind of like the old school Barry costume did. You know, you can see them want to make their own way, address the old continuity, but then change it to what they want it to do. And it's a very yes and approach, right? It's an improvisational kind of approach. So you yes-anded it, and then they tweak it to make it work for them. And to see these writers do that at such a young era, I thought was really interesting. It was really good. I really, really liked it. For the artist on this story, it was mainly I wanted to talk about Paul Ryan, who I feel like did the most of it. The second artist was John Nyberg. But Paul Ryan actually, unfortunately, left us in 2016 because I was looking at his art and I was like, oh, this is incredible. It was really good. It was exactly kind of the art I wanted to see, very of the time. Just great. He did some great costume redesigns. He did some great panel layouts. I loved it. And then John Nyberg was really, really awesome too. I think he did the Human Race arc, which was very cool. Yeah, just beautiful stylized art for both of these. And I was a big fan, so couldn't express more adoration for these artists. I just thought like the way that they drew everyone was really awesome, and it was very consistent and to the point where I couldn't tell the difference quite at the time. The third arc, I believe, was a different artist. Tom McCraw wasn't my favorite, but art was really good. It was just of the time in all the ways. So sometimes if you guys want to know my art style, I lean more house style of the 90s, where it's like flat colors, not super dramatized images unless it's like Tim Sale, but that's just me, you know, whatever. Anyways, when it comes to what I actually thought about this story, this hardcover, when it comes to being a Flash fan, I really do, and maybe a DC Comics fan, I really think everyone should look to this. I think conceptually, it's really incredible. It's a love letter to all the runs that came before it. It's two scrappy young writers before they hit it big and like really, you know, before the industry lets them take off and do what they want to do in it. I just think it's a really cool exploration for all of those reasons. But yeah, I think you should all go check it out. My name's Cameron. I'll just read comics. I love them. I'll see you guys next time. Oh, for my rating, I'm going to give this a, I don't know, 7.6 out of 10. See you guys next time.